G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Easter Sunday morning, cold, grey, promising to drizzle if we're lucky. So this morning's background briefing report will be conducted from inside the hut. And from what I can make of the promos, today the crew at Background Briefing are going to explain to us the recent doings of the alt-right, the neo-Nazis, the thugs who are attempting to conduct a putsch in Australia. First, they infiltrated and attempted to take over the Humanist Society. Then they infiltrated, were discovered and expelled and banned for life from the Young National Party. And now, where are the alt-right now? Working in Fraser Anning's orifice. The Queensland Senator, the famous Islamophobe who breaks eggs with his head. And the alt-right neo-Nazis are trying to get Fraser Anning elected, re-elected to the Senate. Last time he rode in on Pauline Pantsdown's coattails with 19 primary first preference votes. And because it's a pretty cold sort of a day, I'm going to light the fire and listen to the radio, and you can join me. And allowing for this self-indulgent introduction, the 15-minute upload limit, and the fact that such programs often run 45 minutes, this will be at least a 3-part series, possibly a 4, I don't know. We'll see how we go on the counter. Till later. I have wallabies to feed. Life's good in the forest. But one has a fire to light as time moves on.
This year, in the back lot of a light industrial district in Melbourne, an odd Australian political legend was born. Cameras were rolling, journalists were on hand, and Queensland Senator Fraser Anning was on his feet. This was the setting for Egg Boy. Now, you might think you know how this story ends already. While Fraser Anning was speaking to a TV camera, 17-year-old Will Connolly smashed an egg onto his head. Within seconds, he was being punched by Anning and then wrestled to the ground by Anning's supporters, who put him in a chokehold and started kicking him. Will Connolly gains immediate national fame. He will live on now forever in internet memes. But what is lost in all of that is what Fraser Anning was saying that day, who he was talking to, and how they have gained national prominence by circumventing the mainstream media. Reporter Alex Mann brings you the story, and just a heads up, you'll hear some strong language and confronting content.
Hello, is that Fred?
Yes, that's right.
Hey, lovely to meet you.
Yeah, come in.
Thanks, thank you. Walking through the door of Humanist House feels like entering a portal to a bygone era. So this is the place?
Yeah. Just had this floor done.
There are wooden panels on the walls, and there's this big yellowing poster of Albert Einstein. Carefully handwritten notices provide instructions to guests about upcoming events, and there's a small, well-worn donation box near the bookshelves. Light comes from a single globe hanging in the centre of the room. Oh, nice.
There's another talk here.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. This is the setting for the New South Wales Humanist Society's Wednesday night open forums. 81-year-old Fred Flatow is one of the Society's founding members.
Well, it's a philosophy of life. The main 2 points are that we believe in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the other point is that we have a naturalistic philosophy as against a supernatural. So we don't believe in the supernatural realm, just the one natural realm. That's basically what modern humanism is about.
So it's probably fair to say that this quaint community hall in the heart of progressive inner city Sydney is one of the last places you'd expect to be targeted for a covert white supremacist takeover. I mean, there's even a rainbow painted on the outside wall.
It's our fault to a certain extent. We should have been more careful. Yeah. Today I'm going to give an account of the present hostile takeover attempt of the New South Wales Humanist Society and how we found out about it. That's all on the internet.
Fred Flatow is reading excerpts of a speech he gave to the Society's members back in 2009.
It has the character of a real detective story.
In the speech, Fred tells the members how the Humanist Society's troubles all began when during the early 2000s they decided to rent out this hall to a group of young men calling themselves the Public Information Forum.
Another name for it, they call themselves Club Nation, spelt with a K, like in German, Club. One of the conditions of attending a meeting is that you must be of European antecedents. It takes a lot of time to read, but this gives you...
Dozens of Club Nation members signed up as members of the Humanist Society. But what Fred and the Humanists didn't know was that they'd unwittingly let a group of neo-Nazis into the club. And as members, the Club Nation crew had full voting rights.
They were members, but, they had never been active before. We suddenly found that a lot of new people got voted onto the committee at an AGM who nobody knew.
These new members were a motley crew. One of the men had been in prison for killing his mother and throwing her body into Canberra's Lake Burley Griffin, weighted down with concrete blocks. Another was a white supremacist who dreamt of bombing a shopping centre and who years later was found guilty of weapons and child sex offences. He's in jail now. And another who would eventually find himself campaigning for Fraser Anning's re-election. Do you remember a guy called Andrew Wilson? What do you know about Andrew Wilson?
Andrew Wilson? Yeah. Yeah, well, he's one of the ones who got onto the committee, and he was involved in some previous racist organisations.
But back when they all joined the Humanist Society, Fred was completely oblivious to any of this. His first clue to the new members' ulterior motives was a tip-off from the public. So he fired up the computer and started searching for their names online. He found them on the Nazi forum Stormfront, talking about the Club Nation events, while other Australian members discussed infiltration strategies in plain sight.
He says, no, we don't wear any kind of uniforms when we infiltrate the traditional political parties and institutions. So they've had that idea a long time, to infiltrate other organisations and try and bring them down.
Fred became convinced they were after the organisation's assets. What do you think they wanted?
Well, the building.
This would have given the new members control over assets worth more than $500,000, enough to sustain a burgeoning neo-Nazi movement.
That's what they wanted. They were happy here. They were renting at one stage, and they wanted to make it their permanent home, I think. Yeah.
What was it like for you in that moment? It's an organisation that you helped create, and all of a sudden there's a suggestion that there might be Nazis in a takeover bid.
Well, it's a very stressful time, especially when they got a majority on the committee.
They got a majority on the committee?
They had a majority on the committee, and we managed to call a new AGM, which is pretty difficult to do. And after that, we started to turn things around, but it was still a very harrowing experience.
The group was eventually expelled from the Humanist Society. Even so, it marked Andrew Wilson's first big attempt at using covert infiltration as a political strategy. And for him, it was just the beginning.
I'm Mosman Park man running for a seat on his local council is promising to shut down public housing and shift the tenants to Fremantle. Andrew Wilson blames the tenants for home break-ins and antisocial behaviour and says where they live is a dump that doesn't fit in the affluent western suburb.
Nearly 10 years after Club Nation's failed takeover of the Humanist Society, Andrew Wilson was back. This time as a candidate in the 2017 council elections for the southern suburb of Perth called Mosman Park.
This is what I'm concerned about. We have the Housing Commission here in Wellington Street, and as you can see, it's an absolute dump. It needs to go, and it needs to go right away.
He probably liked the controversy that surrounded it all. It certainly gave him more attention to his campaign, and I think he really saw that as a positive.
Georgie Carey was one of his political opponents. She was 21 at the time and had decided to run in what was her first council election. The majority of councillors were white men and middle-aged, and Georgie was hoping to shake things up.
I kind of just wanted to bring my own experiences with me that are vastly different to those that were currently on council.
While Georgie campaigned for more vibrancy and diversity in the community, there was scepticism about Andrew Wilson's motives.
A big afternoon heading your way, and as always, you can join in the conversation. 922 11 882. All right, Andrew Wilson wants to join the Mosman Park Council, and he joins me on the line. G'day, Andrew.
Hi, Ollie. How are you?
I'm good, Andrew. So why should Mosman Park be immune from public housing tenants?
Well, look, Ollie, I have a big heart. If you met me, you'd say, wow, that's
I have met you, Andrew.
A big heart. Well, there you go. So
I have met you.
Know me.
I do know. I don't know you that well. I have met you before, and I know that you have a memes for the Urban Gentleman Facebook account, which is a satirical Facebook account. So I'm wondering if this video and your election here, or your proposed election here, the town of Mosman Park, is actually just a piss take.
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Ollie.
As election night approached, the campaign intensified, and Georgie suddenly found herself in the middle of controversy.
So it was a Saturday evening, and I posted on my campaign page this quote from the local government minister that said local government was predominantly male, pale and stale.
Georgie posted the article to Facebook and went to bed. But while she slept, her Facebook post was shared to an alt-right meme page called Abhorrent Australian Memes. A mob of abusers began targeting her for being anti-white and discriminating against men.
And then I woke up in the morning to literally hundreds of messages.
What a racist, sexist cunt of a thing you are. You should have been swallowed.
When people say diversity is code for white genocide, they aren't expecting you to prove them right.
Don't vote for this anti-white racist scum.
Fuck you, you fucking racist cunt.
It was just really frightening. It's something I hadn't experienced before. I just felt very vulnerable.
And as she scrolled through the comments, 2 posts made her stomach drop.
She lets her mobile number on there. Holy shit.
She's also got her address listed publicly.
The members of the Facebook page had shared her contact details to the anonymous message board 4chan. Then the phone calls started.
I felt like there was nothing that I could really do to protect myself. I could block the numbers when they came up, but most people would call on private numbers, so obviously I can't trace them. And I just felt like I was copying all this hate and attacks, but I was sort of just left kind of standing there.
Georgie removed her contact details from the internet and tried to concentrate on the campaign. Soon, the election night was upon them. Georgie looked across the room to where Andrew Wilson stood and noticed someone scrutineering Wilson's vote count. She recognised him instantly. His name was Radomir Kobryn-Coletti.
When I was in high school, we were both in the same year, but at different schools, and he used to run parties for high school kids.
Not political parties, but events for things like school formal after parties or birthdays.
It was sort of his business, I guess. He charged and made money, but the parties often got cancelled.
Radomir's business partner was eventually fined thousands of dollars to compensate clients after they failed to turn up to multiple weddings and engagement parties. Radomir himself was never charged or fined.
Okay, commencing second video.